At the start of the Jonathan Ross show, I noticed that the interview style of the show was promotional when Jonathan Ross introduced Tom Hardy to the audience. Before Tom Hardy comes out, he changes weight for different roles where he mentions Bronson and Warriors. Does this because he wants the audience to know what he's known for and what style of films he stars in. Jonathan Ross created some sort of build-up to his tone of voice like a drum roll as he mentioned Tom Hardy's name, which affected the audience participation to cheer on even more. It also affects Tom Hardy too because it helps boost his confidence. And by boosting his confidence, Jonathan Ross can get a rapport going between them. The way Tom Hardy reacted towards the audience reveals the purpose of the interview in some sort of way when Jonathan Ross introduces the interviewee by his name. It shows that this interview is going to be based on him. Jonathan Ross has used big impact on this interview technique because it caused everyone to suddenly listen and be eager to discover about his lifestyle as an actor. It is obvious that this interview is a promotional one too, since Jonathan is trying to gain information about the movie that Tom is going to play in. However, instead of talking about his current work, he asks about his past work. Hardy rose to fame in an independent film that he starred in called Bronson.
Why does Ross ask Tom Hardy questions about Bronson? What is his purpose for asking these questions? What is the reaction from the audience by asking these questions about Bronson?
Tom asks if he is currently working on anything major or special, so then Tom answers with, "I'm in Australia doing Mad Max," which is also informational since he is presenting information about what he is doing and what movies he's going to star in.
Insert clip where Ross asks him about what he's currently doing, and then Hardy responds by saying Mad Max. Why does Ross grasp onto this idea that he is playing Mad Max? I.e., you want to be talking about the fact that Mad Max is an iconic film that would be nostalgic to people, and that audiences will go and see that because it's already been quite a popular film before and it's a cult film. Okay, therefore, this is kind of an exclusive and more people will watch and tune in for this interview because they know this information.
So therefore, Jonathan can gather an emotional response from the audience. Tom Hardy looked as if he was shy from the audience applauding him and looking down whilst he was smiling. This could represent that he was quite embarrassed by the way he has responded back, and it makes him look like as if he doesn't want to show his emotion towards the audience cheering for him. Even though the audience sound like fans of Tom Hardy and his work, it also seems to help on the promotional side because fans will get to know more about him from the interview and will talk about him for a long time, and maybe they might discuss him to many relatives that they have seen him in flesh at the Jonathan Ross show, which will cause people to recognise him. It also seems as if Jonathan Ross uses this technique because he knew how the audience would react. In a way, it would help to benefit his show on the promotion side because more people will tend to watch his show from the fact that he is interviewing famous stars. During the interview, Ross keeps repeating how Hardy is a remarkable actor. The reason why Ross keeps repeating himself is because he is confidence building so that Ross can get to know him. By doing this, he is trying to get Hardy to reveal more about himself so that he can learn more about Hardy.
Insert an example of where Ross is confidence building.
Ross encourages a conversational atmosphere in which he tries to build a rapport with Hardy through a series of light-hearted questions.
Insert an example of where he's being light-hearted. Perhaps a good example of this would be like the football section of the interview. What is it about these questions that makes what is it about these questions that makes Ross seem like he's being light-hearted? How effective is Ross at being light-hearted within the section?
However, Ross's relaxed style at times fails to build this rapport, which sometimes leads to a competitive interview that is less.
Insert example. This one you might want to choose the bit where he's asking about his past and the use of the drug taking.
Also proves that it's not a hard news interview. At the start of the Jonathan Ross show, I noticed that the interview style of the show was promotional when Jonathan Ross introduced Tom Hardy to the audience. And by boosting his confidence, Jonathan Ross can get a rapport going between him to many relatives that they have seen him in flesh at the Jonathan Ross show, which will cause people to recognise him. It also seems as if Jonathan Ross uses this technique because he knew how the audience would react. In a way, it would help to benefit his show on the promotion side because more people will tend to watch his show from the fact that he is interviewing famous stars and looking down whilst he was smiling. This could represent that he was quite embarrassed by the way he has responded back, and it makes him look like as if he doesn't want to show his emotion towards the audience cheering for him. Jonathan Ross has used big impact on this interview technique because it caused everyone to suddenly listen and be eager to discover about his lifestyle as an actor. Charles Heston bowling for Columbine. He doesn't want Heston to dodge or walk around the question and get out of it because he wants his opinion for research and information. This then gives the audience an enhancement of understanding for both Michael and Heston. Michael becomes aggressive because he wants a specific answer from him. The answer that we receive from this seems as if he takes the question in a light-hearted way by giggling before he actually responds to the question. This again is making the confidence of Heston grow and would be more easy to get around the topic and ease his guard. One key question Michael states: Canada has 7 million guns but less crime than America. This is a little more of a personal question as it is asking for his opinion but is also competitive. This could spill away the technique that Michael is trying to use, but he does it in a slow procedure to gain Heston's and gather information. When both the interviewee and the interviewer are in the house, the interview starts. The first question gets striked. Do you have any guns in the house or on you? This is after he announced that he has a gun club too, or he is with a gun club. It's a question that gathers information from researching about Heston's life at this point. The position of Heston is laid back, which indicates that he is comfortable with the interview, which concludes to that he is going to be more open. He states that America is an extremely violent nation and that it is in the nature to attack and kill one enough. This then leads to Michael to question James if he thinks countries like the UK and Germany are attempting to rule the world due to many killings and violence. Heston then says no. This is letting the audience know that the view of what he thinks and information on his personal beliefs. Despite the fact that the interview is getting interesting from cutting between the question and the answer, it shows that Michael is being biased and manipulating our view of something that is meant to be factual. At the start of the Charles Heston interview, we can see the way Michael introduces himself as a director and member of the gun club Heston leads. This is to assure he makes Heston believe that he is on the side of the argument and just wants to talk, just like the James Nichols interview. This is so he can gain information from Heston. Again, we see this when the music and on screen action parallel to each other as he waves and says, "Good morning to everyone." This is not something you would do if you was going to confront him about what he has done and why this leads him into a false sense of safety. James Nichols bowling for Columbine. When the camera cuts into the house, it's obvious that we clearly miss something simply because the scene before it does not match up with it. It creates enigma towards the audience and makes us want to know the full story. I strongly believe that Michael Moore purposely did this to push his opinion forward and to make the documentary seem biased in a subtle way. In the Michael Moore interview, we get to discover who trailed the bombing in Oklahoma City. The interview starts with 2 mid-shots of the interviewer and interviewee, Michael and James. It makes me believe that Michael Moore wants us to agree on his behalf by not showing any negative parts of the interview. He then explains that the person he stayed with was a very nice guy that was staying there for 3 months. It also shows that he is patient and will get the answer out of him after some time without getting straight to the point. In addition to this, Michael Moore uses informal and suggestive questions to make it look like he is talking general interest into James's life. Apart from the cutscene introducing soundbites, the interviewer and interviewee are in the house and the topic becomes much more personal. The reason why it becomes more personal is because they are in a quiet environment and James will feel more comfortable when he's talking at his own home, which then he concludes us to be accepted in his household, indicating that he is more open to discuss the topic. It also gives an impression that he is on James' side and isn't here to get him in trouble. I believe that this has caused James to think that Michael wasn't that interested with the bombing in Oklahoma. I also believe that it gives the audience an enhancement of audience understanding on someone we don't actually know yet until after this question when he is introduced as a voiceover. In other words, he used the voice of God here let the audience understand who James Nuttall is and why he's so important. The first question that is said, we hardly hear a response, but from his body language, it seems as if he has been fired shots already. He quotes, "Those federal officers were shaking in their boots." From the answer given, we can judge his character and his attitude towards these type of questions. It gives us an enhancement of understanding of his personality. He begins to refer back to the bombing, but still makes it seem as if he is on James's side. He asks an open, suggestive question. Did any convicted men stay with you? I believe it's a suggestive question because he is leading him on to the main subject, which is the main purpose of the interview. Another technique used in the interview is investigative. It turns investigative as soon as James gains trust in Michael